Scaling your business globally? That usually means juggling multiple tools. One for payroll, one for HR, another for IT, and before you know it, things slow down. Or you could just use Deal. Deal is the global infrastructure for work, powered by AI and backed by thousands of in-house experts. From hiring and onboarding to payroll, devices, and compliance, Deal handles it all in over 120 countries. One platform, one partner, zero headaches. Book your demo now at deal.com. That's DEEL.com/BT.
This is TransportBT, a podcast of BT correspondents.
Welcome to TransportBT, a podcast of BT correspondents. I'm your host, correspondent Derryn Wong. Every week, my colleagues and I break down a business story that matters. Now, Halloween is just around the corner. The air is thick with spirit. Something lurks, waiting for its day to appear. There you are, having pleasant dreams about owning a car, paying less than $40,000 for a Siri, but you feel something is wrong. You wake suddenly in a cold sweat and you look to the front of the bus you're asleep in, and there is no driver. In fact, the thing piloting the steel box which encases your mortal body is literally not human. Dun, 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 dun. And that's because it's not even an entity. It's actually a program or an algorithm. We're of course talking about autonomous vehicles, cars, buses, or perhaps even aircraft that don't need feeble human minds or flesh, or our crude biological senses to get from place to place. Now, I'm not making this up, of course. As we reported in BT earlier this year, Singapore's acting Transport Minister Jeffrey Xiao said it earlier, I have no doubt in 5 years you will see many AVs in Singapore. And while AVs have been tested in Singapore for many years, in 2025, it's when the government has really put its weight behind the technology. Official AVs are now plying the roads of Punggol, and the first self-driving bus contract was awarded in October, an $8.1 million contract to deploy 6 16-seater electric driverless buses in Marina Bay and One North by 2026. But is a future without drivers really like that movie I, Robot, faster, safer, freeing you from the drudgery of driving? That's why we have Associate Professor Raymond Ong from NUS College of Design and Engineering, Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering, to come talk to us all about the subject. So welcome to the show, Professor.
Yeah, hi, thanks.
Yeah, so can you tell us a little bit about your experience in transport and in AVs?
I've been working in transportation research for the past 20 years. And in terms of autonomous vehicles, in 2019, I'm also part of the team that actually worked on the first autonomous shuttle trials in NUS.
Right.
There we are here today, and I'm very happy to see that we are going forward with autonomous shuttles.
Really cool. So let's get down to the basics first. So how do you define an AV really? I mean, there are different kinds of AVs. Some are, retrofitted into existing cars and some are buses. But, what really makes an AV?
I think we have to first understand what do we mean by the level of autonomy. It could be human-driven with some sort of autonomous function that perhaps help you to drive straight, cruising, assistance, right? But that is not really the kind of autonomous vehicle that we are looking at. So we are actually looking at autonomous vehicles that really do not need human intervention to actually drive ahead and to make decisions and to behave basically autonomously like a robot or like a human being would do. And I think a lot of people may not have realized that actually in Singapore, the first sort of autonomous vehicles is really our train system. You might not have realized that actually apart from the North-South line, the East-West line, all the trains are actually autonomously driven.
That's true. They've been around for quite a while and are quite proven as well, right? But, we want to talk about driverless cars and buses here, obviously. It's a different ballgame from riding rails. And as you said yourself, they've been tested. Even NUS has tested some driverless buses for many years. But what has changed recently for the Singapore government to really come on and say we're really pushing for AVs?
From 2019 till today, the most important thing that perhaps make now the time to really look into autonomous shuttles or buses is really the cost. And number two is really the capability of the sensors. When we started then, the sensor technology, the AI algorithm may actually be a little bit more immature than compared to today. And this really has changed a lot over the past 6 years. And with so many proof of concepts that was done, and even operations in China, in US. All this has actually allowed us to take a look really at, hey, can we actually have autonomous shuttles here in Singapore?
So it's really a case of the technology is now becoming mature.
Yes, it's really a case of technology and I have to say cost.
Cost. So that's how AVs have matured really, and now they're coming to the market. But I think what people really worry about is safety. I mean, when you ask a human driver, are they safe? And they always say yes, they're the safest thing around, and they proceed to crash into trees and whatnot. So is it true that AVs are typically much safer than the normal human driver?
Actually, in most of the accidents that we see for human-driven vehicles, basically it's the human.
Yeah.
There's a cause of accidents, right? Be it aggressiveness, road rage, or even could not react in time. And this is something that would be eliminated if, let's say, the driver is actually a robot.
Well, they don't get distracted, they don't get tired, right?
They don't have any emotion, they won't get angry, and they won't horn at a person in front of them or purposely overtake someone. So yes, that is the case. But of course, we have those what we call M1 testing, milestone 1 testing that's currently been done in C-Trans to make sure that the vehicle can function and drive as if it's a human driver passing certain standards. For example, you're turning, reversing.
So that's a standard for them to pass.
Yes, it's a standard. So the challenge then is we do not expect that the whole country will be full of AVs at this point in time. There will be a phase of a mixture of autonomous vehicles and human-driven vehicles. And that is where the challenge begins because robots have no emotion. But the drivers on the road in a mixed traffic environment do have emotions. And that is where we wanted to understand because that would be a critical phase that will be perhaps many years or even decades.
That's quite far down the road. But, Singapore has its own testing center for AVs, right? C-Trans, right? Do you know what they do there? So how do we ensure that AVs are safe for Singapore's roads?
So basically, the autonomous vehicles, if they want to actually run in Singapore, they will have to go through a series of testing to ensure that the algorithms can behave as if it's a human through a straight road, turns, doing a U-turn, doing curve in different conditions, be it raining or sunshine, or even lighting conditions. So you can see that actually they go through a robust set of tests to make sure that they can move on the road. After that, usually we will actually want them to run on road testing so that the algorithms recognize the surroundings, operating environment, and the potential vehicles that's there. So that's what we call localization or on-road testing. After that, after a certain kilometers or hours, then we say that, hey, actually, we can actually mean that for operations.
So it's kind of like you're teaching them to drive in Singapore.
Exactly.
Because the conditions are different everywhere, right?
Yes. Basically, we have a robot that's like a baby.
Yeah.
We go through, make sure that they can pass through the exam. And then they go on the road. They need to learn the environment, learn how to behave like a human being. And then after that, they will actually be on the road. But of course, there will be a safety driver at the first point in time.
That's really fascinating, actually. And, it sounds like it's quite a robust system. And I think nothing has happened so far. I don't think anything major will, cross fingers. But do you think there's anything that AVs might fall short in or something that we can't predict that could happen?
In terms of its capabilities, I don't think there's a problem with that. The only issue is that what's the purpose of the autonomous vehicles? If, let's say, the purpose of them is actually to provide shuttle service, something like a point-to-point plus service, or something like a regular bus service, the expectations for the vehicles is different, which means that the training has to be different so that they behave in the correct manner. And this context has to be actually defined, and a series of testing needs to be done to make sure that they behave as if it's a shuttle bus or a regular bus service. And this is something that I think LTA is doing from the Punggol trials and the upcoming trials. They will be looking at this in greater detail, and we have to do it.
So you're saying that there might be some difficulty in training the AV algorithm to act differently in different circumstances or different forms of transport. Is that what you mean?
It may not even be the AV issues.
Okay.
Let's say this AV is moving into an environment whereby we have elderly. They will have to go up and there will be some certain reaction. Their reaction time is not like a healthy adult. And the solution might not even be changing the vehicle. It could be something as simple as an operational change, or it could be something as simple as an infrastructural upgrade. It's this part that we need to understand more. And we will only know it when we try the testing.
Cool, thanks, Professor. Now we're heading for a halftime break, but when we come back, could all drivers be replaced by faceless robots? And how does this change the business of transport? More when we're back.
Lens on Singapore is now bigger and better. The same deep dive exploration of socioeconomic and geopolitical issues which impact our lives here in Singapore and the region is now a video podcast. If watching a conversation is your thing, join Clarissa Montero in monthly conversations about things that matter. Subscribe to the BT Lens On playlist in the podcast tab of the Business Times YouTube channel and start watching today. BT Lens On Singapore, now available in audio and video.
And now, back to TransportBT, a podcast of BT correspondents.
All right, we're back from our break here with Derryn Wong on TransportBT, and we're here with Associate Professor Raymond Ong, who's talking us through the robot driver apocalypse, or robot driver heaven, it could be. So, Prof, when you take a taxi or a ride hail, do you like talking to the driver?
Oh yes, in fact, when I took a Grab here to SPH, I was talking to the driver for the entire ride. And that is something pretty interesting because there's a human interaction that's involved.
Actually, there are all kinds of interesting stories that come out from there. But
Exactly.
okay. But to get back to the point, as at August 2025, Singapore has around 150,000 private hire drivers and taxi vocational license holders, and around 9,500 bus drivers. And, the government always says this is not a threat to employment because there are other jobs that would be created from, changing to an AV system. But is that really true?
Well, to put this into perspective, we have to understand the demographics of our drivers that's in the P2P and taxi industry. So basically, we are looking at an industry of drivers who are aging rapidly, and quite a huge number of them would basically retire in another 5 to 10 years' time. Then the question then is, when these drivers retire, then where do we find those drivers? And this is something that is really a very serious problem, because if we do not address the problem now, we are just delaying the problem to 5 years to 10 years' time. And because currently we still require a human safety officer to act as a safety driver or to handle any emergency situation for the autonomous bus or even a car or a shuttle, this is still a one-man operation vehicle. There's no difference between that and a regular bus or a regular P2P service.
But eventually the driver will disappear, right?
Exactly. And that is where we will expect that person to be upgraded to man perhaps n number of vehicles. It could be 2, it could be 3, it could be 4, depending. So then it will actually help us to prevent a labor crunch 5 to 10 years down the road. So I think it's a very real concern, and we are being responsible to think about that.
And I mean, this kind of technological improvement will also bring upskilling, right? So what other kind of jobs would come out from adopting AVs?
Yes, of course, the no-brainer is that we will need to have drivers who not only can drive, but also are like controllers. They can control the movement of the vehicles, intervene when it's required, and even to detect any anomalies through the suite of images. That kind of skill set is very different from the mundane skill set that we see from the drivers today. And another kind of industry that will be coming out is a whole group of maintenance technicians who will need to know how to actually repair or maintain autonomous vehicles. And these are not the mechanical, electrical type of technicians that we see at a workshop today. So they are basically engineers who deal with perhaps LiDAR, video camera, sensors, and even software engineers who need to check on the algorithms, and even communication engineers to make sure that the sensing, the data processing, and even the data transmission to the command center. So you can see that the kind of industry that has moved up has upskilled in general. And I think this is something that is going to drastically change the industry. But of course, I can understand that existing workshop technicians, they will be quite worried about that. But don't worry, because this change is not going to happen drastically overnight. It's actually very gradual.
So that's really an entire ecosystem kind of slowly morphing. And is there any downside to this at all, you think? I mean, they replace your driver fleets with AVs, you operate for safer, for longer as well. Any drawbacks that you can see right now?
I think we would need to actually calibrate our expectations, knowing that we also have to let the autonomous vehicle learn and to actually have some initial starting to make sure that users gradually accept the use of autonomous vehicles.
Like what I said at the start, like not be freaked out by not having a
Yes,
driver.
exactly on that. So don't get freaked out on that.
Yeah.
And then use it, try it, accept it. And then after that, you find that it's good. Then, of course, we will be able to move it on the larger scale.
And now we see, big companies like Grab, ComfortDelGro, they're already kind of putting their feet into the AV space, right? And how do you think that will change the way they do business? You could even have possibly a 24-hour cab, right? That would be good for them mostly, right?
Exactly. I think Grab and ComfortDelGro are obviously looking at the opportunities autonomous vehicles will bring for them. And the other industry that is exactly at the front line that is dealing with the aging driver population. And the fact that they're so active in pushing for the Punggol trial, right?
Yeah.
Yes, you can see that they are right into the space, showing that they see this as a very urgent problem.
Do you think it has anything to do with the fact that younger private hire drivers don't really drive late at night? They always say that the ones who are picking up the fares at midnight are the older taxi drivers, right?
Yes. Oh, you don't get emotional problems with a robot. Or you won't complain as a robot, so you just continue to move on, right? So it will actually optimize the business operations, perhaps even allowing new business opportunities, because now you can have late night services or very special services if you need to go from point A to point B in a very low demand area where no human driven drivers want to go.
Sounds good. I don't mind taking a cab at 2 a.m. and I don't have to talk to anybody. But that's just me. And zooming out a little bit, when we plug these AVs into the existing transport system, will we have any other effects on other parts of our transport system at all, or on a more macro view?
Having the AVs coming in jobs definitely is something that will entirely change the industry. The makeup of what constitute to a labor force in the transport sector, and even transformation of transportation company to be more than a transportation company, because now with the technology, everything is just linked and you can actually easily move to become a service provider.
Yes, exactly. So your platform becomes more important, right?
Yes. So there are actually opportunities for the operators, to be very honest. And I think we'll be looking at a very transformational landscape change for the transport sector.
One last question. Do you think that it might actually change the idea of car ownership as well? Because why would you, I think the transport minister mentioned is like you don't need to own a car anymore. You can just, press your app and the robot, not the guy, comes at any time you want it, right?
So this brings to the fundamentals of how we actually plan for transportation in Singapore with autonomous vehicles coming in. And if, let's say, we are looking at autonomous shuttles, that is mainly to complement the point-to-point services or the taxi services and the bus services, whereby now the bus services can be much more enhanced. So you don't have to worry about at 2 a.m. there's no bus. So you can see that the whole business will actually have changed. And the most important thing is if it's so convenient to have such a service, why would I need to have a car?
That's true, yeah. Especially if Shiwi prices like that. But that's a horror for another time. Okay, thank you so much, Associate Professor Raymond Ong from NUS, who's talked us through the changes that are coming thanks to autonomous vehicles. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
Okay, next week on BT Correspondence, we'll take a look at what happens to HDB flats that are getting to the end of their 99-year leases. So tune in and check that out. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.
This is a podcast by the Business Times. Find more BT podcasts at businesstimes.com.sg/podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. This podcast is meant to provide general information only. SPH Media accepts no liability for loss arising from any reliance on the podcast or use of third parties' products and services. Please consult professional advisors for independent advice.